Ladies and gentlemen, empathy is one of the most beautiful traits a person can possess, but it is also one of the most misunderstood and often exploited. When discussing why good people seem to suffer more social attacks, empathy plays a central role. Empathetic individuals are highly attuned to the emotions of others. They can sense pain, joy, discomfort, and unease even when it's unspoken. This deep sensitivity makes them natural helpers, listeners, and supporters. However, the same trait that allows them to connect on a deep emotional level also makes them vulnerable to manipulation, misunderstanding, and unfair treatment by those who either do not value empathy or perceive it as weakness. Good people with strong empathetic tendencies often prioritize the needs and emotions of others above their own. This selflessness can make them targets for those who seek to dominate or take advantage of others. In environments where ego, competition, and manipulation thrive, empathy can be seen as a threat or a flaw. When a kind person refuses to engage in toxic behavior, doesn't retaliate, or shows compassion in the face of aggression, it disrupts the expectations of those who operate from a more self-serving mindset. This often leads to the empathetic person being misunderstood, sidelined, or even ridiculed for their unwillingness to conform to the harsh social dynamics around them. Empathetic people are also less likely to defend themselves aggressively, especially in social settings. They often avoid conflict, seeking harmony instead. Unfortunately, this can be perceived as passivity or weakness, inviting more dominant personalities to exert control or project their insecurities onto them. The very act of not fighting back becomes a reason some people feel emboldened to continue their attacks. In social circles, schools, workplaces, or even families, good people are sometimes scapegoated not because of any wrongdoing, but because they are emotionally open and responsive, making them easier to affect and hurt. Another reason empathy attracts social attacks is jealousy. People with deep empathy often have fulfilling relationships, are genuinely liked by others, and emit a warmth that draws people in. Those who lack emotional intelligence or who are internally conflicted might see this and feel resentment. Instead of examining their own emotional void, they may target the empathetic person as a way of asserting control or expressing their envy. Good people may find themselves being gossiped about, excluded, or criticized not for who they are, but because their goodness inadvertently triggers the insecurities of others. Empathy also comes with a tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt, sometimes to a fault. Good people may overlook red flags or make excuses for poor behavior, hoping that kindness will eventually inspire change. This makes them more susceptible to repeated mistreatment, because they are often the last to give up on others, even when the relationship is harmful. Their belief in human goodness is admirable, but also a reason why they can remain in toxic environments longer than they should, enduring unnecessary emotional wounds. Ultimately, the reason empathetic individuals suffer more social attacks isn't because there is something wrong with them. It's because there is something profoundly right. Their light exposes darkness, compassion reveals coldness. Their integrity unsettles manipulation, and in a world that sometimes rewards cruelty, apathy, or ambition over kindness, those who lead with empathy become mirrors to others' shortcomings. That reflection is not always welcomed. Still, despite the social attacks and misunderstandings, empathy remains a strength, not a weakness. It takes courage to stay kind in a cruel world. It takes resilience to feel deeply and keep showing up with compassion. Good people may suffer, but their impact is lasting, and their ability to love, understand, and heal others is the very thing that makes them invaluable in a world that needs more empathy, not less. Kindness misinterpreted is one of the core reasons why good people often suffer more social attacks. In a world that can sometimes be cynical, fast-paced, and self-centered, acts of genuine kindness are not always understood in the way they are intended. What should be seen as a strength, a sign of inner character and emotional maturity, is too often seen as weakness, naivety, or a strategy with hidden motives. This fundamental misreading leads many kind-hearted individuals to become targets for criticism, manipulation, and exclusion, not because of wrongdoing, but because their goodness is either misunderstood or resented. When someone is consistently generous and forgiving, others may start to take that behavior for granted. In some cases, people perceive kindness as a lack of boundaries or self-respect. Instead of seeing a compassionate person who values peace and empathy, they see someone who won't push back, someone who can be dominated or used. As a result, the good people might find themselves being asked for more than they can reasonably give, emotionally, physically, or mentally. When they finally reach a breaking point or assert themselves, they're often met with confusion or hostility because their kindness has built an unrealistic expectation of constant self-sacrifice. Additionally, unkind people tend to avoid drama and confrontation. While this is admirable, it may unintentionally send the signal that they will tolerate mistreatment or disrespect without consequence. Some individuals exploit this, and knowing that the kind person won't retaliate or expose them. Over time, this perceived lack of defensiveness can attract those who are drawn to control or overpower others. Thus, the very trait that makes good people valuable, emotional intelligence and patience, becomes a reason why they are more vulnerable to social attacks. Another layer to this issue is projection. People who are uncomfortable with their own emotional limitations or unresolved wounds might feel threatened by kindness. It forces them to confront qualities they lack or repress in themselves. Instead of appreciating the kindness, they twist it into something else, calling it fake, performative, or manipulative. In doing so, they attempt to discredit the good person to justify their own discomfort or jealousy. These projections can lead to passive-aggressive behavior, backhanded compliments, or outright attacks designed to tear the kind person down to a more manageable, emotional level. Kindness is also often mistaken for weakness in competitive environments. In workplaces, social circles, or even families where success is measured by dominance, assertiveness, or emotional detachment, kind individuals may be seen as less capable or ambitious. They may be overlooked for opportunities, spoken over in conversations, or excluded from decisions simply because their style doesn't match the prevailing power dynamics. This misinterpretation creates a situation where they are unfairly judged or even sabotaged, not for any lack of skill, but because they refuse to engage in the aggressive behaviors that others have normalized. Furthermore, kindness often comes with a high level of emotional transparency. Good people are usually open with their feelings, quick to express gratitude, support, or vulnerability. Unfortunately, not everyone reciprocates that openness with respect. In fact, some people react to it with contempt or discomfort. They may mock or attack the kind person to deflect their own inability to be emotionally present or sincere. Despite all this, the true power of kindness lies in its resilience. Being kind in the face of hostility takes more strength than returning harm with harm. Good people may suffer more social attacks, but their integrity, sincerity, and depth of character remain untouched. Their kindness is not a flaw. It is a rare and beautiful strength in a world that too often forgets how to care. Rather than changing who they are, kind individuals must learn to pair their compassion with discernment and boundaries, so they can continue to shine without being dimmed by those who fail to understand their light. Emotional sensitivity is a powerful trait that often lies at the core of what makes a person genuinely good. It allows individuals to deeply feel, understand, and empathize with the experiences of others. However, this very sensitivity can also make good people more vulnerable to social attacks. Their heightened emotional awareness, while a gift in nurturing relationships and fostering compassion, can become a point of exploitation in a world that often values toughness, detachment, and dominance over emotional depth and authenticity. People with strong emotional sensitivity tend to pick up on subtle cues that others miss: tones of voice, changes in body language, unspoken pain. This makes them incredibly intuitive and caring, often able to provide comfort and connection where others cannot. But it also means they are more deeply affected by criticism, exclusion, or hostility. A comment that might bounce off someone less sensitive can stay with an emotionally attuned person for days, affecting their sense of self, worth, and emotional balance. They feel more, and so they hurt more when mistreated, even by people they barely know. In social settings, emotionally sensitive people are often misunderstood. Their reactions might be labeled as overthinking, too emotional, or too soft. Instead of being seen as emotionally intelligent, they're viewed as fragile or overly dramatic. This misunderstanding leads others to believe they can target these individuals without consequence. Since emotionally sensitive people tend to avoid confrontation and internalize pain rather than fight back, they become easy targets for blame, gossip, and subtle social sabotage. Another reason emotionally sensitive people are attacked is because their presence holds up a mirror to others. Insecure or emotionally repressed individuals may feel threatened or exposed by someone who is so in tune with feelings and emotions. They might sense, consciously or unconsciously, that their own emotional walls or unresolved issues are noticeable in the presence of someone more emotionally aware. Instead of facing their discomfort, they project it outward and strike at the sensitive individual, mocking them, excluding them, or accusing them of being too needy or sensitive. In this way, social attacks serve as a form of emotional deflection. Emotionally sensitive people are also generous with their energy. They are the ones who listen without judgment, offer support without being asked, and give the benefit of the doubt even when it's not deserved. This emotional generosity, while beautiful, can attract those who are emotionally unavailable or even toxic. These individuals take advantage of the sensitive person's compassion, leaning on them for emotional labor, but offering little in return. When the emotionally sensitive person begins to feel drained or tries to set boundaries, they may be met with resentment, manipulation, or backlash. Moreover, emotionally sensitive people often hold themselves to high moral standards. They care about doing the right thing and are acutely aware of how their actions affect others. This makes them more likely to feel guilt, self-doubt, or regret even when they've done nothing wrong. People with less emotional awareness might use this to their advantage, shifting blame onto the sensitive individual or using guilt as a weapon. The sensitive person's desire to maintain harmony and avoid conflict makes them more likely to accept blame or absorb emotional wounds that are not theirs to carry. Despite the pain they may endure, emotionally sensitive people are not weak. In fact, their strength lies in their ability to continue loving, caring, and connecting deeply in a world that often does not reward emotional openness. Their capacity to feel is what makes them resilient, creative, and deeply human. While they may suffer more social attacks, they also possess the inner depth to transform that suffering into wisdom, compassion, and authenticity. With self-awareness and boundaries, emotionally sensitive people can protect their energy without hardening their hearts, remaining true to themselves while navigating a world that may not always understand them. Jealousy is one of the most powerful and often hidden forces behind why good people suffer more social attacks. At first glance, it may seem counterintuitive. Why would someone who radiates kindness, empathy, and integrity become a target of social negativity? The truth is, when someone consistently demonstrates inner peace, compassion, and authenticity, it can unintentionally trigger deep insecurities in others. Jealousy arises not from what the good person does to harm others, but from who they are and how they make others feel about themselves by comparison. Good people tend to lead with sincerity. They are often humble, generous, and empathetic. These traits are admirable, but in environments where competition, ego, and superficial status are prioritized, such traits can stir discomfort in those who feel lacking. When someone encounters a person who is genuinely kind, emotionally balanced, and morally grounded, it may confront them with their own shortcomings or unhealed wounds. Rather than facing these uncomfortable truths, the envious person may lash out through gossip, exclusion, criticism, or passive aggression. As a way to diminish the source of their discomfort, a jealousy often masks itself in subtle behaviors. For instance, a good person may notice others questioning their intentions, spreading rumors, or undermining their efforts even when they have done nothing to provoke such behavior. These social attacks are not responses to wrongdoing, but are often attempts to neutralize a perceived threat. The threat, in this case, is not of harm but of comparison. The goodness of one person can highlight the insecurity or inadequacy of another, especially when that goodness is unwavering and natural. Moreover, good people often achieve influence or admiration without seeking it. Their authenticity draws others to them. They become loved not because they are trying to be, but because they represent what many people strive to be: genuine, trustworthy, and grounded. This organic respect can trigger jealousy in those who are chasing external validation or recognition. Instead of improving themselves or confronting their inner turmoil, Some individuals resort to tearing others down as a shortcut to feeling superior. Jealousy also thrives in group dynamics. In social circles, a good person may become a scapegoat because their calm demeanor and emotional maturity can be misread as passivity. Groupthink or mob mentality can amplify jealousy-fueled hostility. One person's envy, when unchallenged, can quickly infect others. The good person, who is unlikely to retaliate, becomes an easy target for projections, criticisms, or blame. Their silence or restraint is misinterpreted as weakness, further emboldening the attackers. Even in professional or academic settings, jealousy can manifest in sabotage or resentment. A person who performs well without arrogance, who uplifts others rather than competes, can be viewed with suspicion or envy. Their quiet confidence becomes intimidating to those who believe success must come from aggression, loudness, or self-promotion. This is especially true when a good person receives recognition that others feel entitled to. The envious individual may respond questioning the legitimacy of their success, spreading negativity, or isolating them socially. What's tragic is that good people often internalize these attacks. They question themselves, wonder what they did wrong, and even consider changing their behavior to avoid further harm. But it's important to understand that jealousy is not a reflection of their flaws. It's a mirror of someone else's pain. The good person, instead of shrinking or hiding their light, must recognize that being a target of jealousy often means they are doing something right. Their kindness, integrity, and authenticity are powerful forces, and not everyone will be ready to meet them with acceptance. To navigate jealousy-driven attacks, good people must learn to set boundaries, protect their energy, and stay rooted in their values. Understanding the source of the attack helps depersonalize the pain. While jealousy may cause temporary discomfort, it can never dim the true light of a genuinely good soul. Moral integrity is a cornerstone of what defines a truly good person. It refers to the unwavering commitment to doing what is right, even when it's difficult, unpopular, or inconvenient. While this trait is universally praised in theory, in real-world social environments, those who live by strong moral codes often find themselves facing unexpected backlash. The very quality that should earn respect and admiration, moral integrity, can become a source of tension, isolation, or even hostility from others. This contradiction is at the heart of why good people often suffer more social attacks. When someone operates from a place of moral integrity, they refuse to compromise their values for convenience, approval, or gain. They speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable. They stand up for what's fair even when others stay silent, and they hold themselves accountable when things go wrong. In group dynamics, this kind of clarity can be deeply unsettling to those who prefer to operate in moral gray zones or who benefit from turning a blind eye to unethical behavior. People with high moral integrity often act as unconscious mirrors. Their actions can highlight the compromises, contradictions, or ethical lapses in the behavior of others. For example, if someone in a workplace is cutting corners or engaging in gossip, a morally upright colleague who refuses to participate or subtly calls it out may become the target of resentment. Instead of respecting the principled stance, others might perceive it as judgmental or threatening. They may feel exposed, as if their actions are being silently judged, even if the morally strong individual is not passing overt criticism. Furthermore, individuals with moral integrity often prioritize long-term values over short-term gains. This means they won't participate in manipulative tactics, social climbing, or backdoor deals. In competitive environments, this can be seen as a weakness or naivety. Others might exploit their honesty or try to discredit them in order to maintain dominance. In friendships or relationships, their refusal to enable toxic behavior or tolerate deceit may lead to conflicts or rejection. The people who are used to getting their way might lash out when someone with integrity doesn't bend to their will. Moral integrity also includes having the courage to speak up when something is wrong, even if it's unpopular. Whistleblowers, activists, or even regular individuals who simply choose to stand against bullying or injustice are often met with harsh social consequences. Instead of being applauded, they are isolated, labeled as troublemakers, or subtly excluded from group circles. This is because moral courage forces others to confront uncomfortable truths about their own complicity or inaction. Good people with strong moral compasses are also less likely to go along with groupthink. They don't participate in cruelty, cliques, or mob mentalities, and they often act as quiet resistors. In a world where blending in is often easier than standing out, this quiet resistance can be met with hostility. They may be mocked for being too serious or too sensitive, when in reality they are simply refusing to betray their own principles. Ironically, the people with moral integrity often suffer more not because they are weak, but because they are strong in a way that challenges others. They are not easily manipulated. They can't be guilted into betrayal, and they are not swayed by popularity or power. This inner strength makes them intimidating to those who rely on manipulation or conformity to maintain their influence. And so, rather than respecting that strength, some will try to tear it down through social attacks, gossip, or exclusion. In the face of these challenges, the people of moral integrity must remember that their suffering is not a reflection of failure, but a testament to their authenticity. They are often the ones who spark change, even if that change begins in silence and solitude. Their strength lies not in being accepted by the crowd, but in walking alone when the path of righteousness demands it. Holding on to moral integrity in a world that sometimes punishes goodness is not easy, but it is profoundly powerful. The people-pleasing is a behavior pattern rooted in kindness, empathy, and a desire to maintain harmony. Many good people fall into this tendency because they genuinely want to avoid conflict, make others happy, and ensure that everyone feels heard and valued. While these intentions are admirable, they can paradoxically lead to increased social attacks and emotional strain. The reason lies in how people-pleasers are perceived, treated, and sometimes taken for granted in social dynamics. At its core, people-pleasing stems from a deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. Good people often want to be seen as dependable, likable, and accommodating. This makes them say yes when they want to say no, stay silent to avoid confrontation, and sacrifice their own needs for the comfort of others. In doing so, they may unknowingly create unbalanced relationships where their kindness is expected rather than appreciated. Over time, others may begin to take advantage of their agreeable nature, treating them as emotional or social doormats. One of the most significant reasons good people suffer socially due to people-pleasing is that it makes them vulnerable to manipulation. When someone consistently puts others' desires ahead of their own, it signals that their boundaries are flexible, or worse, non-existent. This invites dominant personalities, narcissists, and even passive-aggressive individuals to exert control. The people-pleaser becomes easy to guilt-trip, easy to blame, and easy to silence because they fear upsetting the balance or losing affection. Moreover, people-pleasing can inadvertently cause resentment, both from others and within the people-pleaser themselves. Friends or co-workers may begin to question their sincerity. When someone always agrees, never challenges, and always says what others want to hear, it can appear disingenuous. Others may start to distrust the person, sensing that their compliance is more about seeking approval than being honest or authentic. On the other hand, the people-pleaser might quietly accumulate frustration, the feeling invisible or undervalued, yet still unable to break the cycle for fear of backlash. Another painful irony is that people-pleasers often become targets of social attacks because they're perceived as safe. They are unlikely to retaliate, speak up, or create drama. This makes them easy scapegoats when things go wrong or when group tensions arise. Bullies, gossips, or even insecure individuals may single them out precisely because they assume the people-pleaser will not fight back. Their silence is misread as weakness, and their kindness becomes a license for mistreatment. In some cases, people may even attack a people-pleaser out of envy. There is a quiet strength in those who give so much of themselves to others. Their ability to connect emotionally, to be thoughtful, and to lift others up can threaten those who feel disconnected or inadequate. Instead of admiring these traits, some individuals try to diminish the people-pleaser's light by spreading negativity or sowing doubt about their character. A further consequence of chronic people-pleasing is the loss of personal identity. When someone is always adapting to meet others' expectations, they may lose sight of their own values, opinions, and desires. They become socially attacked not just by others, but by their own inner voice. This internal conflict can lead to anxiety, burnout, and a pervasive sense of being misunderstood or unappreciated. Ultimately, the path of people-pleasing is filled with emotional landmines, especially for good people who genuinely want the best for others. To suffer socially despite one's best intentions is a painful paradox, but it can also be a turning point. Recognizing the unhealthy aspects of people-pleasing is the first step toward building healthier boundaries and more authentic relationships. Good people must learn that saying no is not selfish, asserting boundaries is not rude, and prioritizing their own well-being does not make them any less kind. A true kindness includes self-respect. When good people stop trying to please everyone and start living in alignment with their values, they not only reduce social attacks, they also attract healthier, more balanced connections. People-pleasing may be rooted in love, but it must be guided by wisdom and self-worth to truly thrive. Boundaries are essential for emotional health, personal integrity, and respectful relationships. Yet they are often the very thing good people struggle to maintain. In the context of social dynamics, especially for individuals who are compassionate, empathetic, and kind-hearted, the lack of strong boundaries can make them more vulnerable to social attacks. The very qualities that define good people, openness, generosity, forgiveness, can be manipulated or misunderstood when not supported by firm, healthy boundaries. Good people often feel a sense of responsibility for the emotions and comfort of others. They want to be there for everyone, to help, to comfort, and to heal. However, without clear boundaries, this desire can easily turn into emotional overextension. When someone constantly gives without regulating how much of themselves they are offering, they become an emotional resource rather than equal participant in relationships. This imbalance often invites mistreatment, intentional or not. The people may take advantage of that goodness, expecting support without reciprocation, or they may disrespect that person's time, space, or voice. Lack of boundaries sends an unconscious signal that one's needs are secondary. In friendships, this could mean constantly being available even at one's own expense. In work environments, it might manifest as taking on more tasks than is fair. Over time, others start to believe this is normal, and what began as generosity becomes an expectation. When the good person finally reaches a point of exhaustion or dares to assert themselves, they may be met with confusion, resentment, or even hostility. Why? Because boundaries were never established in the first place. So any attempt to create them later feels like rejection to those who are benefiting from the absence of them. Another reason good people suffer more socially when they lack boundaries is the tendency to avoid conflict. Confrontation often feels deeply uncomfortable for empathetic individuals. Rather than risk upsetting someone, they may suppress their own feelings or let things slide that should have been addressed. This tolerance can be perceived as weakness or passivity, making them easy targets for blame or manipulation. People who avoid conflict become magnets for those who thrive on control or dominance, further increasing the risk of social attacks. Additionally, without boundaries, good people may internalize the emotions of others too deeply. They might take responsibility for problems that aren't theirs, feel guilt for saying no, or feel compelled to fix things that others have broken. This emotional absorption not only drains their energy, but also prevents them from protecting themselves from toxic behavior. When you don't draw the line, others may not even realize they've crossed it. Some individuals may even attack good people out of discomfort or envy. Boundaries create respect and balance in relationships, but when good people operate without them, if they appear too available, forgiving, or too accommodating, instead of appreciating these traits, some people react with resentment or suspicion. They project their own insecurities onto the good person and lash out socially, perhaps feeling inferior or exposed in the presence of someone who radiates moral clarity or emotional depth. Setting boundaries does not mean becoming cold, distant, or selfish. Quite the opposite. Boundaries allow good people to continue being good, just not at the cost of their own well-being. A boundary is a form of self-respect. It tells others, I care about you, but I also care about me. When boundaries are clearly communicated and consistently upheld, relationships become more balanced, and the likelihood of being targeted for social attacks diminishes. In conclusion, boundaries are not walls, they are gates. They let in what nourishes and keep out what harms. For good people, learning to set and defend boundaries is an act of empowerment. It ensures that their kindness does not become a liability and that their emotional generosity is met with respect. Goodness without boundaries is often misunderstood and mistreated, but goodness with boundaries becomes a quiet, unshakable force. A projection is a psychological defense mechanism in which individuals attribute their own negative traits, feelings, or insecurities onto others. In the context of social dynamics, especially when it comes to good people, those who embody kindness, compassion, honesty, and integrity, projection often plays a major role in why they become targets of social attacks. The qualities that make someone good can, ironically, provoke discomfort, envy, or resentment in others who have unresolved emotional issues. Rather than face their own inner struggles, people may project them onto those who seem morally upright, emotionally stable, or consistently kind. When someone is insecure or dissatisfied with their own life, they may feel threatened by individuals who embody traits they had. A good person, simply by being themselves, can reflect back what another person lacks: patience, empathy, self-control, or a strong moral compass. Instead of using that reflection as a catalyst for self-growth, many respond defensively. They distort the image, shifting blame or negativity onto good person, accusing them of arrogance, manipulation, or hidden agendas. In reality, it is not the good person they are reacting to. It is their own discomfort in being reminded of what they are not. For example, a person who lacks emotional maturity may find themselves triggered by someone who listens deeply and responds with compassion. This can make them feel inferior or exposed, as if their emotional shortcomings are suddenly highlighted. Rather than acknowledging their own limitations, they may attack the kind person's character, calling them too sensitive, fake, or weak. This projection helps them avoid facing their own emotional void. Good people are also prime targets for projection because they often avoid confrontation. They try to see the good in others, and they typically seek peace over conflict. Unfortunately, this non-confrontational nature makes them easy targets for those who need a scapegoat to dump their unresolved issues on. The good person becomes a mirror, absorbing other people's pain, anger, and disappointment without deserving any of it. They might find themselves accused of things they never did, blamed for problems they didn't cause, or misjudged in ways that make no logical sense. Social projection is especially prevalent in group dynamics. When one individual begins projecting onto a good person, others may unconsciously join in, forming a kind of social alliance based on shared discomfort rather than truth. This leads to gossip, exclusion, and social attacks that spiral without any clear foundation. In these situations, the good person becomes a vessel for collective shadow, where a group unconsciously dumps their negativity onto the most morally sound member. It's not because the good person has done something wrong, but because they stand out as someone who hasn't. Projection also often arises from unresolved guilt or shame. When individuals feel guilty about how they treat others or ashamed of their own actions, they may lash out at someone who holds up a metaphorical mirror to their behavior. Instead of owning their guilt, they accuse the good person of being judgmental or self-righteous. This accusation is rarely rooted in reality. It's a defense to protect their ego from acknowledging their faults. The unfortunate irony is that good people, who usually have high levels of empathy, are more likely to question themselves when attacked. They internalize the projected blame, wondering what they did wrong, how they can fix things, or what they could have done differently. This self-doubt only deepens their emotional pain, even though they are innocent targets. Understanding projection is essential for good people to protect their emotional well-being. Recognizing that an attack may say more about the attacker than the victim is a powerful realization. Good people don't need to change who they are to avoid projection. They need to learn how to identify it, detach from it, and set clear boundaries. When someone projects onto you, it's a reflection of their inner battle, not your worth. And knowing this helps good people maintain their dignity and integrity without carrying the emotional baggage that was never theirs to begin with.